So thanks everyone for joining us today for our October member meetup. I'm ALTA and I'm the CEO of ALTA. Really excited to be hosting Fiona today. In the spirit of reconciliation, ALTA acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. We are delighted to welcome Fiona Kirkman. Fiona is the CEO and co-founder of FamilyProperty and was also the co-founder of Law Switch. In addition, she runs her own family mediation practice, Kirkman Family Law. As a specialist family lawyer and mediator, Fiona understands the challenges family law professionals face, particularly time and cost pressures, and is passionate about utilising dispute resolution and legal technology to assist families reach resolution without court. I know that her story is amazing. As I said, I've had a sneak preview of the presentation today. We're really lucky to have you here today. Thanks, Fiona. Just before I hand over to you though, I've got a few housekeeping items for everyone. As with all our meetups, the session is designed to be informal and conversational. Fiona has prepared a presentation, but do feel free to jump onto the microphone or post in the chat at any time if you have any questions, or if you want to offer any of your experience or exploring the issues further. If you pop your question into the chat, I'll make sure I pick it up and verbalise it to the group. We will also have a more structured Q&A at the end, though, if you prefer to hold your questions until then. The session is being recorded and will be available on demand to our ALTA members only via our closed Slack channel. I will now hand over to you, Fiona, to talk us through your startup journey with FamilyProperty through to acquisition by Smartful. Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you, Maraig, and thank you to ALTA for having me today. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Fiona Kirkman, and as Maraig said, I'm CEO and co-founder of FamilyProperty. It was also Law Switch as well, and I am a specialist family lawyer and mediator. And I'd love to know a bit about yourselves. So if you could utilise the chat and add in your name, organisation, and what you'd like to, any questions you've got about my journey or any other questions you have, or any views you have, to please add them in the chat, and Maraig and I will be monitoring that and answering the questions, sometimes as I go or otherwise at the end. So what I'm hoping to get out of today, I wanted to share my journey, which consists of the involvement with ALTA and Legal Geek, also being a member of the Law Tech Hub in Sydney, taking on investment, taking on a board, research and development grants, collaborating and integrating with other products, and then of course navigating the sale of the business and transitioning from being owners to running the business and how that's worked. So there's quite a lot in that journey. We've been quite busy over the last 4 years, but hopefully you find it useful for your own journey in the legal tech world. So just an introduction on what is FamilyProperty before I deep dive into my journey and what our vision was for FamilyProperty. So our goal at the time, PEXA was quite big in the conveyancing world, and it was getting a lot of traction, it still is, in conveyancing and for property lawyers, etc. So we wanted to be the PEXA, or the framework for family law matters across Australia and beyond. So that was our big vision, and across that ecosystem. So not just lawyers, but lawyers, mediators, legal aid, the courts, government, organisations, etc. And I'm pleased to say we've been able to do a lot of that. We are across a lot of the ecosystem in the family law world. So what do we do? This is a short video of what FamilyProperty does. It just goes for 90 seconds, so I'm not going to do a full demo. Happy if you want to reach out for a full demo, but this is just an introduction video to FamilyProperty. So as you could see from the video, we're quite an expert system in family law that provides tools to accurately prepare, model and document financial and parenting arrangements. So we've worked quite hard on that tagline. That's all important from a marketing perspective. So prepare in that we get the information and get the documents through intake and disclosure, and then model through the parenting calendar and the interactive balance sheet to model out those parenting arrangements and financial settlement proposals, and then document through the automated document suite of balance sheets, proposals, and now we're building out the FCFCOA documents. So there's, as we know, there's different types of legal tech products, but we're an expert system and we've gone quite deep in the family law space. We started with financial, and that was strategic because we thought that there was a major pain point with financial matters and the admin involved in financial matters. And where there's a lot of admin, there's a lot of opportunities for automation. So we started there, but then as we progressed, we felt the need to add in the parenting calendar and build out the product so that it was an end-to-end family law system. The family law landscape. So as I said, we're across the ecosystem: family law firms, not-for-profit, financial advisors, general practitioners, private mediators, the education institutes. We also have a pilot with the FCFCOA. And as you may or may not know, there's separating families. There's probably still about 1 in 5 people go through separation. So it's a big industry. We don't sell directly to the separated couples, but the wraparound professional services, we sell into all of those industries. So that's an introduction to family property, but getting back to our journey, it wasn't just me. We became known, I guess, at the beginning as the couple in law, myself being a specialist family lawyer and mediator, and Tim, my techie husband, who's the technologist. This is us here back in 2018, may have changed slightly since COVID, but that's in London at Legal Geek. So where did we begin? This was our house pre-acquisition. We started in our garage here in September 2017. Tim was heading up a company in e-learning, CTO. I was running my mediation practice, Kirkman Family Law, that I continue to run. And we would have a lot of discussions around the frustration that I was feeling in the family law world, having been in this area for almost 20 years now, about how much admin is involved and how that's quite time consuming and also quite costly for clients. And we were having these discussions around the kitchen table, and it just so happened at the time Tim's company that he was working for went into liquidation, and he said, I think it's time that we join forces as a couple in law and technology. So as you do as a couple, went to have a drink at the local club and had the initial business plan over a couple of drinks, and that began our journey, starting to bootstrap. I think we were working in the garage, hot garage, without any backdrops at the time, bootstrapping, and started building first Law Switch and then FamilyProperty. So Law Switch was our first product. Law Switch was focused on legal chatbots and automation for your law firm. So it wasn't just family law, it was law firms generally, and the focus was chatbots. Back then in 2017, people didn't really know what a chatbot was. So what's a chatbot is something we had to explain at our demos. When we were looking at, particularly around that intake, how could you automate that intake through the chatbot, enabling people going through a legal matter to do it themselves online 24/7 in their own space and time. At or around the same time, we'd started discussions with Professor Patrick Parkinson, AM, about family property. Patrick Parkinson, for those that don't know him, is an expert in family law, and he approached us confidentially with the initial idea for FamilyProperty that he'd been building out with his son, a questionnaire with a focus. Initially, his idea was to go to the general public. So our values aligned, and the ideas we're really excited about, because my background in family law, and he was excited that we were a couple in law and technology. So we had a number of meetings, generally in this Eternity Cafe here, and we entered into an agreement with him to build out FamilyProperty at the same time as we were building out Law Switch. Yes, it was quite a lot to do both. So what happened from there? We started to get some traction with Law Switch. I think, met David Bushby, and he introduced us to ALTA. We were the founding members of ALTA, and then we also met at a similar time Terry Motorshead from the Centre for Legal Innovation, and she invited us to do our first presentation up in Brisbane about the new path to legal innovation and showcasing Law Switch. So off we went as a couple in law and technology, our first presentation, and then at the same time, use the opportunity, as you do with these road trips, to take the family to the Gold Coast, Commonwealth Games, and started on that trip getting the creative juices flowing for the development of FamilyProperty, taking that idea that Patrick Parkinson had given us to develop that into an actual product. So from idea to product. As I said, we then met David and Stevie Gassi, and then as we became founding members of ALTA, we started presenting at Law Switch at ALTA demo days. So for those that have been involved with ALTA for a while, these ALTA demo days, Macquarie Bank, various ones in Sydney, Melbourne, AltaCon days, etc. Just a really good opportunity to pitch the product in a short time frame and get feedback and iterate as we went. And out of that, an exciting opportunity came about, which was we won the Legal Geek World Tour in 2018 and a trip to London, which was rather exciting. But unfortunately, at the same time, I think managing so many things, we had a significant challenge, and that was that I was struck down with meningitis. I spent 6 weeks in ICU, and I was told that I may be brain dead and may never work, or the family was told I may be brain dead and may never be able to work again. So that was obviously quite a significant challenge for us. Our children back then in the hospital, and I spent my birthday in the hospital, and everything was on hold. And our specialist was a little negative. He's like, no, I don't think you'll be able to work. You may have this, you may have that. And whilst I was in hospital, that's when we found out that we'd won that trip to London. And I think for me, that was quite an inspired me to get well. And I was proving to the doctors, I've done my Sudoku puzzle, I've read my book, I want to recover, and I am going to go to London in October. This is going to happen. So that was June. When I came out of hospital, late July, we knew we needed our first hire. So of course you look at family and friends who can help. And my friend who I went to high school with, she was our first hire, Samantha Eads, and she's still with us today. So she assisted initially, as you do, multitasking, marketing, sales and training. We also utilised, I was using some volunteer law students across our legal tech and law firm at the time. And the three of us were really the only ones until later in 2019 that we hired a few people, but then we hired too many and we had to make them redundant due to cash issues. And it wasn't until October 2020 that we hired our first sales manager, which in retrospect, we should have hired earlier. We now have a whole client success team, which is our largest team. I didn't even know what client success was back then, but now we have 4 who are family lawyers or family mediators with that expert knowledge. So then we launched, this is all between June and October. We hired Sam. We launched FamilyProperty in beta to our, and we've, again, on retrospect, we should have probably done a smaller cohort of maybe half a dozen to a dozen clients that was more manageable and we could work with to get feedback. But instead we did an open beta, probably had about 30 firms that came on board. But it was very exciting to see that product come to fruition. And at the same time, we were then heading off to Legal Geek. So we, as you do, stopped off at Singapore and did a few presentations there with the Law Society of Singapore, then went on to London and enjoyed a few days in Ireland as well. So that was for Legal Geek, and that was an amazing opportunity to showcase the product, speak about the product, do our first exhibition stand, and also meet with potential clients, potential partners in both Singapore and London. I'll get through this quickly and feel free to add questions as you go while you remember it, but I'll hold questions to the end because there's quite a lot to get through. So shortly after that, we were invited by Lander & Rogers to be part of the first ever Law Tech Hub in Sydney. They'd run one cohort in Melbourne, but this was the first in Sydney. It was at the time powered by YBF Ventures, which was a co-working space and helping with startups. So we were working with legal tech, but also property tech and real estate tech, food tech, etc. So it was a really innovative startup culture, and it was good to be part of, and that network, and Lander & Rogers became a client to provide feedback, etc. We then started to get some interest from larger organisations like family relationship centres, legal aid organisations, and with Professor Parkinson's contacts, started those discussions with the court. That led to us needing to have more structure around processes and procedures, more around the security. So we worked with Intersoft for security penetration testing. We also engaged RSF Consulting for research and development grants. That was quite helpful to then start paying Tim, because at this point nobody had been paid apart from Sam on a casual wage. So it was good to be able to get that some government funding for the work or the development innovation that Tim was doing. Once we had secured one of those larger contracts, I had seen in an ad that Hunter Steele, who's the CEO of Smokeball, was advertising for somebody for a family law product role. And I said, oh, they do family law product. I best reach out to him. So I reached out to him on LinkedIn, and that began the journey, which has obviously led to acquisition, but that began the journey of them having investment in family property, having a board member, which was Jane Oxley with Family Property, and then ultimately, a couple of years on, acquisition by Smokeball of Family Property. So it was just me keeping on LinkedIn and following that up. I am one who loves connections and loves connecting people and collaborations, and it was just me reaching out to him. So that began the journey of Professor Patrick Parkinson, who had already had the initial idea. He invested and became part of the board. Jane Oxley, who was part of Smokeball, she became part of the board. And Terry Giannopoulos, he has a venture capitalist firm, and his wife was one of our first family property, family law firms. So it became the three board and investors, and as well as Tim and I on the family property board. We then looked at collaborations. So we had collaborations, obviously, as soon as we had investment from Smokeball, we explored and started work on the integration between Smokeball, which is a amazing practice management system focused on small law in both Australia and the US. We then integrated with Ilion bank statements to get the bank statement data and also an OCR tool to read the bank statements. And iMediation, who, as you know, is part of ALTA, from a dispute resolution platform, joining family property and exploring that. So at the same time, we were securing some significant contracts with major players in the family law space, the legal aid organisations, family relationship centres, the courts, and then doing these collaborations. At the same time, you need to meet with clients, get feedback, etc. Our clients were all over Australia, so why not go and meet them all? So we went to the ACT, we went to Melbourne, we went to the Northern Territory, and we ran workshop sessions at YBF in Melbourne, and obviously in Sydney and Newcastle as well. So we did quite a lot of travel back then, made the most of a bit of travel with the children as well. And it's really important to get that feedback early on as to how to tweak the product. Which led to, I guess, late 2020, we hired our first sales manager, and we were starting to get traction across all of the family law ecosystem, the family lawyers, family mediators, and the family relationship centres and larger not-for-profits. So what happened then is we were approached just before lockdown and my birthday by Smokeball on whether we would be open to an offer for acquisition. Tim and I discussed it. We already knew, having Jane on the board and having worked with Smokeball in the integration, that they were a great cultural fit and their values aligned with ours. And We also had reached a bit of a ceiling with family property. We didn't have the cash flow and the resources to be able to take the product where we wanted to take it, which included going to the US or other overseas markets, or going to the consumer, etc. So we were at a ceiling, but we knew that they could help with taking the product further from a global perspective, but also the resources and the business and the values aligned. So we got an offer. Mark Allen from FCW Lawyers, he is part of ALTA as well, and he had been instrumental in the investment and the creation of the board. And of course, we went back to him when we had this offer, and him and his team were really helpful in the acquisition, as well as our accountants, WS Group. But it was a lot of work. We got the offer in June. It was 3 months, which included at a time when we were in lockdown. I was doing my master's. We were trying to run the businesses, homeschooling two children. It was a hectic period, but they used this product Ansarada for due diligence, and due diligence was really important with the acquisition. So again, on retrospect, we probably should have had our paperwork more organised than we did, but we did get there, and we settled in September last year. We were acquired by Smokeball. The end of last year and early this year, there's been a lot of celebrations from an individual and a team perspective. We were nominated for various Peacemaker, Law Awards, Mumpreneur, etc., which was exciting and always good to go and celebrate those achievements. And then we sort of moved into the Smokeball world. So one of their big things is they use this scaling up Vern Harnish techniques, which really helps, and I'd recommend this book for legal tech startups. It really helps focus you by having like this top 5 strategies over a period of thirds. And it really helps you as to what to say yes to and what to say no to. And I think we really needed that, because we'd done a lot in the previous couple of years, and we really needed to focus more and then be able to rebuild the foundations to be able to grow further. One of our major sort of goals was, how can we take this product overseas? And in May this year, we had the opportunity to not only speak at the AFCC conference in Chicago, but meet the Smokeball team, who is Sarah's starting on our family property team in November, where we started to meet with divorce attorneys in the US, in the state of Illinois, and taking the product overseas, which is really exciting, because that's where we had wanted to be in the journey, and we started that journey in May. We also, in collaboration with Smokeball and Family Property, so we remained a separate company and a separate identity, even though they're 100% owned by us. But we started to do things in collaboration, like the 2022 State of Family Law Conference, where we went to Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and had major speakers from the court, major lawyers, etc., presenting on the FCFCOA changes, etc. So it was really about, as well as those exciting events, it was really about reinventing, or like sort of renovating the foundations of family property to move from being a startup bootstrapping from our garage to a scale up. So we had to change our pricing model. We went from an annual firm subscription plus a transactional matter fee to a monthly firm subscription plus a monthly fee, then to a per user per month. So we've only just moved on to this per user per month, which really helps in having predictable income streams, and is a clearer way of predicting the income, but also for clients to manage that budget. And it also enables them to use the whole of the product, not what we had before. They could use part of the product, the questionnaire and the chatbot, but then they had to pay the additional fee to unlock what we think is the really innovative interactive balance sheet and parenting plan document automation. We also changed our system. So we went from a HubSpot sort of free and then starter plan to Zendesk for help, Salesforce for managing sales, and Churn Zero, which we're just implementing to help with client training, client success. So that's been a big project. We've also worked on a deeper integration, which we only launched yesterday, but really quite a deep integration, best in the market, Smokeball plus FamilyProperty with the data sync, document sync, etc. So the aim being that for family lawyers, why wouldn't you go to Smokeball plus FamilyProperty? But still separate brands, as you see here, separate sales, training and pricing for Smokeball and FamilyProperty. We grew our team, so there's Tim and I and Sam, so that was the three of us, and obviously we had grown and we continue to grow the team. This is us in our Smokeball office in Sydney. So I think I went through that fairly quickly. I might, just on time, I think, Moray, but I might open up for questions.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing what is quite a personal journey as well, the kind of structured corporate startup to scale up journey. So that's really lovely of you to share that with us, Fiona. And I noticed that you highlighted a number of challenges that you went through along the way, not by any means small ones either. And it seems like so much has happened in such a short time. I'm sure sometimes you feel like it's been, 20 years worth with all of that information you've shared. So look, thanks so much for that. One thing that really stood out to me during this was that you really made the most of opportunities to leverage the legal ecosystem. So wherever you could find an opportunity to leverage tax, and thank you also for the plug for ALTA. It seems to have been really a great part of your success. And I wondered if you had any advice. I mean, obviously keeping an eye on LinkedIn and making sure people connect, but it'd be great if you could let us know how you think you can do that really successfully.
Yeah, so I do tend to do quite a lot, as you can see from that journey over the last 4 years. But one of my passions, and I think one of my strengths, is connecting people and collaboration. I think I've got quite a few LinkedIn friends now. If you're not a LinkedIn friend, please link me in. But I think in the early stages of being a startup, it's really important to leverage your contacts and learn from what other legal tech startups have gone through and learn from their mistakes somewhat. And also, so that's from a legal tech business perspective, but also from the target market you're selling to really look at. Obviously, I'm in the family law world, but speaking to my contacts in the family law world, going out to, when we could, and now we can again, physically meet them. And now we're starting to do feedback sessions in the Smokeball office and bring groups of clients together, and then they can network as well, and how they're using FamilyProperty within their firms. But I think that connecting, going to events is really important.
That's great. Now I've got a question here from the lovely audience. Thank you. Did you have to give anything up in the marriage to Smokeball that you wish you didn't have to? Was there anything that you lost? You came together that, which invariably happens with that change, I'm sure, but was there anything in particular that stood out for you in that arrangement?
I think we've been very blessed. It was a good, I think you need to be careful that we did explore if there was other people in the market who could. We sort of had a discussion around that as a board. But Smokeball really had the values aligned to where we were at, and the goals were aligned. Obviously, we had to give up our shareholding with FamilyProperty, but I think that was obviously got a sale price for that. I think in the negotiations, we also had to negotiate our roles. So me being a CEO and what that looked like, the days that I was going to work, and a more stricter regime than when I was working at Kirkman Family Law and Family Property. I'd just work whenever and take holidays whenever and do what often it was working 24/7, which is still a bit the case, but more defined role and a manager that I was reporting to instead of me being and Tim driving the family property leadership. There was the smoke ball leadership that came over that, but that was something I think we were quite content with giving up. And for Tim, he had to, I think, as we've grown, learn to fit in with more of the processes and procedures and the release cycles, etc. But all in all, it's been a very good partnership and a good acquisition, because it was a right fit as far as goals, but also cultural and shared values.
That's great. And that just leads on to another question we've got, thanks, Stephen, which is, what were the common or shared values with Smokeball? And then, how did you kind of identify that? I know that there'll be a stars values, but you must be dealing through your dealings with them as well. Yes.
No, I think that they're very much a company that is big on innovation. And when they started Smokeball, it was about nice people, girls and guys, can achieve in business. And it didn't have to be this dog eat dog world, but you can be a good person, a great sort of culture, and still succeed. And when they started that 12 years ago, they were really big on caring, big on innovation, big on service, and listening and learning and being honest and sort of just making it happen, this sort of hustle culture. And for us, we love continuous learning and innovation, and connecting with people. And those values really aligned well with what we were doing in family property, as well as Smokeball. So just, a good place to work.
Yeah,
and they live by those values, as well as not just put them on the page or on the website.
Yeah, and it seems like you were having quite a, you obviously had the build up of the relationship pre the actual acquisition, so you'd really got a feel for that. Charlotte Elliott, lovely, 8 years of tech experience in law firms, most recently with GLA Piper, currently looking for a role in product management. If anyone needs a product manager out there. Charlotte's question is, I imagine you relied on your experience of what was lacking a lot at first to work out what to build next. Have you had any interesting surprises or pivots based on customer feedback? Very interesting question.
I think that we've got within family property, I guess, the 5 parts, you could say. You've got the intake, the disclosure, the balance sheet, and the parenting calendar and the documentation. That's probably 6 actually. But I think initially when we set out, the feedback from the clients is disclosure is a massive pain point for family lawyers, the collection of those documents and exchange of those documents with the other side. But we have built that functionality out of collecting the documents and exchanging those. But it's funny, I think people like the way that they do things. I think the change management is quite difficult, for getting the emails, where you've got a two-way disclosure portal. It's getting not only the family property client to use it, but the other side, and the other side can be quite stuck in their ways in how they do disclosure. So I think even though we wanted to go very broad, I think we've come back over the years and really focused on the one really standout innovative feature, which is that interactive balance sheet. And I think as we go into the US and overseas, we want to focus more on that one feature that everyone will love, instead of going through like from beginning to end, an end-to-end product, because yeah, that does, there's a lot of work in building out a very deep product in the intake, disclosure, balance sheet, parenting, document automation. And I know some of you have products in those different spaces. And so that's been an interesting journey, and where we've iterated a little bit in approach as well, to focus more. And that's been Smokeball's philosophy as well, to focus us more on.
Yeah, I think that really resonates with something I remember in another member meetup, where we had someone talk about their journey, and they said, you know, you might have all these ideas about all the bells and whistles that will be really cool, that they might be the things that you're in love with, but actually customers will, to your point, you know, there'll be a focus on some key areas in it. And that's where you need to be.
And I think you need to look at the data. Again, in retrospect, we should have looked at the data of usage in more detail from the beginning, and implemented that right from the start. But there's obviously a balance, because there's a cost in having those systems to really look at the data. But that data analysis can really inform your decisions for what product features you build out, and what you focus on, and what you promote to clients and in marketing, etc. So that data is key to successful building out of the product.
Really great. Beth is asking, how would you describe your work-life balance? So I think I know what you're going to say there. Now, compared to when Family Property was a very new startup company, any advice for a work-life balance for anyone in a new startup?
Is there such a thing as work-life balance, Morag? As a legal tech starter, I don't think there is, or a lawyer even, perhaps.
I think we maybe like to put that there's some good tips that you could give, although listening to your journey. Okay. Oh, I tell you what, I saw some lovely holidays with your children along the journey. That was nice.
Yes, you've got to make the most of those opportunities. Whilst you're training clients, you take the opportunity to go on the Uluru trip, etc. So, but I think as it's still quite stressful, but stressful in a different way. But I think I've definitely got more work-life balance now than I did. And I know Tim, my co-founder and techie husband, has. We obviously live together, so I see this. He was at the times when he was building out the product, he was up till midnight every night. We now have more resources, which enables us to delegate more of the work. However, there's now more management and more reporting and more. So it's that balance as well of, we're not in that really like, let's build all the product and build out the features and how we're going to sell it, and doing everything across product and business. We now have a product team and a business team and people within that team, but we've still got, I think, now being part of a global tech company of Smokeball, there is more processes and procedures and top 5 some deadlines that we have to hustle to meet.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now we might just take a few more questions, so please do keep those questions coming in. I'll just ask one of my own while we see if anyone else has got anything. I noticed that you said when you hired your salesperson, you wish you'd done it sooner, and I think that's often, you know, getting staff on versus, you know, when to do it is often a big question as people scale. Was there anything that you think you could say now with hindsight to the group about particularly sales staff, but, you know, obviously customer success is important to you, that you think would be useful for someone following in your footsteps?
I think you have to spend money in order to make money. And I think at the beginning you try and get somebody, or you yourself do everything in the business, and then you try and get somebody like you who can also do everything in the business. But we're not experts in everything. I love marketing and events. I don't mind sales, but I'm not so good at closing the deal. I prefer to get them in and pass it to the salesperson to close the deal. Product I enjoy, but I'm not like a tester to look at all the details. And then training, I quite enjoyed that, but then following them up all the time as far as change management from their manual processes to using FamilyProperty, I wasn't so strong in that. So it's really important to look at what are your areas that you think, even though it's important to know how to do it yourself, but to hire for those areas where they can help complement your strengths and work with you. And I think even though it costs money, the salesperson is imperative because they will bring in revenue for you. And you can look at a base and a commission so that as it builds, they can come on that journey and get that commission as well. But also that trainer and client success. We're in the legal industry, and the legal industry is reluctant, if not resistant, to change. So we need to have people working alongside them to prompt them to be using our legal tech products. So getting somebody who loves working with people and can work alongside them to change to them to use your product is really important. So I think those two hires from a business perspective, and then Tim did all of the web development himself for a very long time until we got a contract developer, and then we've recently hired a full-time developer. But if you don't have that tech person and you're offshoring that can be quite problematic as well, because that can be quite costly. So I think it's important to look at how you could bring that development in-house.
Yeah, that's really helpful and a really thorough answer. I've got another question here. Was the salesperson instrumental in the bigger deals, or did you lead with those yourselves? For example, with the family court, it looks like you had connected with them initially.
Yeah, so with the bigger, there's the smaller law firms, and that's a different sales process and different timing and somewhat of a different onboarding training process to the larger law firms and the enterprise clients like the courts and family relationship centres and legal aid, etc. Those do require, it wasn't just me, it was also Professor Patrick Parkinson, our salesperson, etc., Tim, and it required multiple, I think the courts, for example, was a year, 2 years negotiation for the pilot. So it depends on the client, but again, that's quite resource heavy. To be focusing on the larger law firms, and the enterprise requires a longer sales process, more resourcing, etc. So, but it depends what your product is. We wanted to be across the family law ecosystem, so the small, medium, large, but it is something that you need to weigh up and balance, given resources in particular.
Yes, and I've just got one more question, but while I'm saying this, maybe if anyone else in the audience has something to ask, please pop it in because we'll need to wrap up soon. I did notice at the start, Fiona, that you really had a what people call a big audacious goal. You'd decided yourselves as being the Pixar of family law, and I thought that was just really interesting that that's something that you had kind of embraced from the beginning. Did you ever think that your lovely legal tech business that you garage, which was just a great photo, by the way, with the basketball hoop at the front, would be acquired by the likes of Smokeball, even in this time frame? Do you think it was in the stars or was it in your planning?
I think we're not as much as planners as probably we should be. So I think we were quite blessed to get that opportunity for acquisition by Smokeball, and at that time as well, because I know since then, a year on, unfortunately, legal tech startup values have decreased just because of the change of climate, etc. I think Tim said, you know, we're either going to, you know, be the next Facebook for the family law, or we will probably have an exit strategy to sell out. So they were, you know, either make it like Facebook does, which is very, very rare, as you know, or that exit strategy. And I think for us personally, we were at a point personally as a couple in law and technology where it was a good time to sell. And as I said earlier, the global aspirations with joining forces with a global practice management system has enabled us to pursue those global goals. So I think, and the values, etc., I think it is, I guess, God's blessing on us. From a values perspective as a Christian, I think, you know, praying for the right opportunity, for the right people, for the right timing, all aligned for us at an interesting and very busy time last year. I don't know if I could do that again last year. It was a very hectic 6 months because we then, after we sold, we decided to use the benefits to sell our house and buy a new house as well. So we're not in that old house anymore. We're in a new one. And to do some travel this year has been a real blessing to have taken a bit more of a break than we did last year, but it's still very busy. And it's exciting to be in that next stage of startup moving to scale up and to have awesome team members, including Caroline, who's on here with me as our marketing executive, and Beth, our office manager, who's also online. So, yeah.
Well, it's amazing. Now, I'm just going to sneak one more question in that's come up. Do you now integrate with other practice management systems, or has this been impacted by your acquisition by Smokeball?
We do. It is on our plan to integrate with other practice management systems, and we do have an integration on foot with Evolve Go, which is part of Practice Evolve, which sells to the 16 plus law firms. So Smokeball focuses on the under 15 users. And they have a partnership with Practice Evolve, so that's 16 plus users. But we do have a plan to integrate with other practice management platforms in the future, because family law, as you know, is quite a specialised area. Australia is quite small, so we can't afford just to be with one practice management system, but it's a standalone product, so you don't have to have any practice management system. We work with people who have Leap and Action Step, Affinity, etc. We've got client law firms that are one sole practitioner to 35 plus on all different practice management systems. But because we're a cloud-based system, we can integrate with or we can work with all practice management systems and a formal integration. Obviously, we wanted to go deep and have the best in business with Smokeball, but we do have that happening with Evolve Go, which is a new cloud-based product for Practice Evolve, but we are in the future going to be integrating with others as well.
Great. Well, look, I'm just conscious of time, so unless if there's anything else, quickly get it in now. But I just really want to say thank you, Fiona, and thank you for letting me ask so many questions. It's been a really great interchange with the audience. I think that's really exciting. It shows there's a lot of interest in your journey, and it's obviously resonated with people. And I think, you know, for many of our startups who are coming in, this is what they want to emulate, you know, this amazing success, pushing through the challenges, and ending up in this wonderful environment that you've done through all of your hard work and, you know, all of the connections that you've made along the journey. So thank you again for sharing. It's been really great. And thank you also for being a founding member of ALTA, by the way. Obviously need to say that to you as well. So everyone online, please feel free to reach out to Fiona and connect either via LinkedIn. She says she's a LinkedIn guru. We'll also connect through the ALTA members Slack channel. And I just want to take the last few minutes to give you some ALTA general news. Our ALTA annual general meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, the 16th of November, online from 12 till 1 p.m. Further information on how to register will be released shortly. If you're unable to attend the AGM, we would be grateful if you could complete the proxy form and return prior to the event. And also, don't forget to nominate for an ALTA Award and join us for our inaugural ALTA Awards ceremony on Monday, the 14th of November. Member tickets are just $125 per person and include entry to the Expo Arvo prior to the awards. A 25% discount also applies when purchasing 2 or more tickets to the event. A huge thank you to our ALTA founding partner, Macquarie, our strategic partner, InfoTrack, and our new international partner, NetDocs. ALTA is a not-for-profit and it's run predominantly by volunteers, so we're really incredibly grateful to have the support of our partners and also, of course, all of our members. Thanks again to you, Fiona, today for taking the time to share your story. It's been really inspiring, much appreciated. And thanks everyone for joining us online. See you all again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Morag. Thank you, ALTA, and everyone who has joined us.
Thank you.
Thanks.